The band Exile formed in 1963, and 60 years later, they are still entertaining audiences with their hit songs. Now, their most successful hit, Kiss You All Over, spent 4 weeks at the top of Billboard's pop chart in 1978, and the hit song was also used in the Adam Sandler movie Happy Gilmore and in the film Employee of the Month. Then, in the early 1980s, Exile started to focus on country music. Now, during their run on the country charts, they had 10 number one singles, including I Don't Want to Be a Memory and Give Me One More Chance. The original 5 Exile members reformed in 2008 and continue to tour today. They have 3 gold albums, 8 million records sold, and were inducted into the Kentucky Hall of Fame in 2013, and Exile is believed to be the longest running American self-contained band. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome original Exile member Sonny LeMaire to the show. Welcome, Sonny.
Thank you so much, Ward. Glad to be with you today.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, the band is celebrating 60 years as one of the longest running bands in the history of modern music. How did you guys do it?
I don't know. Without killing one another, it's a good question. How did we do it? Well, it's, it's kind of hard to explain how it happened, except that we, really care. I mean, the longevity requires you really care about one another, and it is a family without a doubt. And we, stayed. We love the music that we have created, and our friendships, and it's somehow through thick and thin, through a lot of trials and tribulations, like every long-term relationship, we've managed to keep it together. We've had some falling outs and everything else, but we ultimately, the bond was too strong to not stay together.
Well, it's now you're also celebrating the 45th anniversary of Kiss You All Over, which hit number one in 1978. I still remember when it hit number one. Are you surprised by the longevity this song has had over the years?
Absolutely. The kind of the saying that 3 minutes can change your life is an understatement, really. That song, we couldn't have predicted, obviously, when it even achieved number one status in 78, that all these years later, it would still be in rotation and played on oldies radio, and people just, it's one of those things where it's an absolute must, of course, that we play the song in our concerts, which of course we do. It's just an amazing song. Thank God for it. And I'll forever be grateful, for the song.
Well, how did the song come to the band?
It was written by our then producer, Mike Chapman, who is an Australian, but he had moved to England. And he hooked up with a guy named Nicky Chin. They were a songwriting partnership, Mike Chapman, Nicky Chin. And they started writing and having hits with artists in the UK and Europe, actually. A lot of success. And they decided, they wanted to crack the American market. They moved to Los Angeles in, I think, 76. And by early 77 or mid 77, whatever, as we were starting to work with Mike, they wrote this song and brought it to us on a cassette. And it was, for the time, it was really kind of a breathtaking song. I mean, we were writing our own music at that time too, but nothing like that. So, thank God we recorded it. And Mike knew exactly what he wanted on the track. We got the recording done, and of course, the rest is history. It was released to radio, and then bam, it just exploded.
Well, a lot of people don't realize today, if people really broke down pop songs that are on the radio today, there's not a whole lot of pop songs. But back in the 70s, the competition was so fierce. there
Yeah.
were so many people on the radio. So you would rarely ever hear a repeat of a song. I mean, if the
Yeah.
DJ comes on and says, "Hey, coming up next is Exile's Kiss You All Over," you may have to wait an hour before you actually heard that song.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
You know,
mhm. Go
go ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry. What?
Well, the sound, when I listen to that song, and like I said, I remember that song the day it came out.
Yeah.
But the sound of that particular song reminds me of that. I don't want to call it a moody sound. It's a
What?
heavier sound, but it
Yeah.
reminds me of the Atlanta rhythm section.
Kind of. Yeah. And we were friends with those guys too, and loved their music actually also. Um, it I'll tell you a little tidbit about it. After the song was recorded, now this is before it got to radio. It hadn't been released yet. We were playing in clubs in and around Lexington, Kentucky, which is where we used to live. Uh, and the audiences were used to us playing original music. So they were used to kind of a certain R&B, pop rock kind of a sound. We would play that song in our shows, and there was the absolute silence, crickets. I mean, it was unnerving to the point, before it was released, we were questioning, whether this song should actually be released to radio because, the audiences weren't reacting to it at all. And once it hit radio, once it hit the airwaves, everything changed, of course. So you never know. You just never know.
That is really strange because I guess it would strike fear into the
Oh,
into the band members that if the audience is not responding to a song, you're like, nah, we're not gonna put this on the album. But
yeah.
then
I
look
mean,
what happened. I mean, that's a strange twist of fate.
it really is. It really is. And here's another interesting thing, because you're broadcasting from Houston area. The song, in those days, when you started getting big stations playing the song, there was usually some region that a song would break out. The song actually broke in Houston, big station, and that's when it's really started to gain momentum, and get all these other stations lined up to go all the way up to number one. But it broke
Yeah,
in Houston.
I'm trying to, back in the day,
Yeah,
here, it could have been KRBE radio,
it was
could
the
have
big
been
pop.
KLOL, which was more of a heavier rock station, but both of those, I mean, it
Yeah,
was rock from, 24 hours a day. But,
yeah,
you know, to me, the greatest songs when it came to pop and rock were the 70s.
yeah. Amazing
And,
tunes.
in some of those bands today, they're still around. Look at the
Oh
Rolling
yeah,
Stones.
amazing. Their new project out there, they're going strong. Um, I mean, that's the thing about, I don't want to, obviously, I'm not comparing us to the Stones in any way, shape, or form, except for our longevity. But one of the things that I think we do have in common is this desire to, yes, everybody's grateful for the hits, the songs that were hit songs. Everybody's grateful for that, thank God. But as an artist, you have to keep moving forward, and you need new music. You just have to keep doing that. So, this year, of course, we've released our brand new project called A Million Miles Later. And, we started writing this album uh, about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, when we started contemplating, what are we going to do for our 60th anniversary? So we thought, well, let's write new music, which is what we did. And we wrote it, recorded it. It took time, and it's out, called A Million Miles Later. There are 16 tracks on the compilation, and we're just thrilled. Absolutely thrilled with the songs and the way it has come about.
Well, I've listened to the whole album. I
Yeah.
love the album. And it was funny because after about the second or third time I was listening, it finally hit me. You guys sound as young as you did 60 years ago. Is there an anti aging secret you'd like to share? Because your
Well,
voices still sound fantastic.
well, we're lucky. I mean, honestly, we're really lucky that that's the case, because I mean, we've had to lower keys in some instances, for songs, but I think, that our vocals still sound really fresh, really new. And it's just we're blessed with that fact, really.
Well, it's funny because as I was listening to all of the songs,
Yeah,
I was like, if you took that album and let's just say you had somebody who had no clue of the history of Exile and
yeah.
had them sit down and listen to the songs, not one person would ever guess that you'd been together for 60 years.
Well, I think that's good, huh?
It's great. I mean, it's amazing how, like you said, you just keep moving forward. And
Yeah.
the album, all of the songs are very today, they're very fresh. But how did Exile make the decision to go from a pop rock band and go into country music? Why was that?
Well, after Kiss You All Over, which was 1978, and it continued through 79, early 79 and everything, we continued to record in LA pop albums. We did three more pop albums in LA and released singles. Unfortunately, they just were not able to happen in the US market, but we were having success in Europe, the UK and Europe. So we were touring over there also with hits over there, but just not in America. So after the third album, um, our manager, here's the other thing. We were writing songs on these pop albums that were not hits for us. For example, in 1980, on an album called Don't Leave Me This Way, we had written and recorded two songs called Take Me Down and The Closer You Get. Now, you may know those songs as hits for Alabama, which they
That's
were.
right.
Monster. Well, they were released to pop radio for us and didn't do anything. I mean, nothing. And that's just one example. The follow up album had a song, which again, Mike Chapman and Nikki Chin wrote for us, that we released to radio called Heart and Soul. I mean, it was a monster song the way we recorded it. Well, Huey Lewis, a couple of years later, recorded it and had a huge pop hit with it. So anyway, our manager in LA came to Lexington. He said, I want to talk to you guys. I've got a plan. I said, okay. So he flies in and we all meet. And he lays out this plan. He says, you guys are writing and recording songs that country artists are having hits with. And it wasn't just Take Me Down and The Closer You Get. There were a bunch of other artists that were recording Exile songs. Now, they didn't go to number one like those two did, but they were on the charts. And he said, these other artists are recording your songs in country music. Why can't you have the same amount of success in country music? They're your songs. So, I thought he was crazy. I really did. I thought, this is insane. And the more he talked, it was like a 2-day meeting about all this. The other guys saw the light immediately and said, yeah, yeah, yeah. It took me a little bit, but I finally said, okay, let's give it a shot. So he, at that time, was also managing Dolly Parton. And one of the great friends of Dolly was our soon-to-be producer, a guy named Buddy Killen here in Nashville. And he asked Buddy, he said, do you remember this band Exile? And he goes, yeah, I do. He said, they want to start, they want to try to get a career in country music. Would you be interested in producing them? And he jumped on it. He said, absolutely. So based upon that, we would go to Nashville. We were still writing a lot of songs, and go to Nashville and showcase at Buddy's club in those days. He had this restaurant, and we would go there and showcase. And finally, we got a deal on Epic Records, and the rest is history. We started having success, which was an amazing thing to do. That's how it happened.
Well, it's funny because when you take the 1970s,
Yeah.
but you can split the 70s. I mean, you can go from 1970 to about upwards to about 75. Then
Yeah.
when 1976 hits, that's when you had the Eagles' Hotel California. You had Stevie Wonder's Sir Duke. So you had all of these, you had this slight change in the sound of the
Yeah.
70s. And then from
Yeah.
76 to 79, you had this explosive number of rock bands.
Yeah.
But then when 80, 81 hit, then the pop scene really, I don't want to make this sound negative, but it's just the truth. 80, 81 is when pop really started sounding a little bit more bubblegum, because you had Andy Gibb come in around 81. And
Yeah.
then really the rock band that probably got a lot of airplay, I think it was 81, was REO Speedwagons with Keep On Loving You.
Yeah.
So I can see where Exile taking the chance to go country, because really the pop scene was changing, and it was changing fast.
It was. It was. I mean, again, fortunately, it was just the timing was right for us. Um, it was a gamble. It was a big gamble, and all the time that when we lost our pop deal in '82, we came back to Lexington and we went to work in a little bowling alley bar in Lexington. And, it maybe seated 150 people, 160 people, maybe. And it was a real humbling experience, but we kept our nose to the grindstone. We had that goal, that brass ring out there that we were going for. And, we weren't going to let anything deter us. So while some acts may have just been disgruntled and upset and whatever, and just folded the tent, said that's it, we're done, we went, no, no, we've got more to do.
Well,
And we
what was
kept
it?
that.
What was it
And
like to have hit songs in country music?
pardon me.
What was it like having hit songs in country music?
Well, it was validation, and it was amazing. I mean, having a hit in any genre is just an amazing experience, because when you think of the odds of anybody writing or recording or having a hit on, it's the odd. You know how many artists are out there that try it, every day, every week, every year, and it's even talented people, and it's not. They're not going to succeed. It's not going to happen. So when it
Well,
happened for Ice, it was like,
yeah.
wow, this is amazing.
Well, back in the early years, I mean, Exile, as a pop rock band, you
Yeah,
toured with Aerosmith, Fleetwood Mac. Um,
hard.
how was that compare? I mean, if you were with you, most likely you were what, opening for those acts?
Yeah, we were.
Okay, when it came into when you got into country music, because you had prior success, were y'all immediately headlining, or were you back to opening up for people like Kenny Rogers, the Oak Ridge Boys, or the Judds?
All of that above. Well, interestingly enough, mostly we were opening. Interestingly, with the Judds, we started a tour where we were the headliner, and of course they uh, was it Mama He's Crazy? What was the first? I can't remember their first single, but when they hit, of course they exploded. So it reversed. We were opening up for them, but yeah, we were opening act, and it wasn't that much different from pop music, really. You know, you know.
No. Well, you bring up a good point, because if you really break down, and let's just use the Judds as an example. If you
Yeah.
really break down that sound, it's not that far off from pop. And even a lot of the country artists, country bands today, they're riding that fine line between pop and country.
Oh, absolutely are. I mean, country to quote country today versus even when we started is shockingly different. You know, it's just a
Well,
lot of
okay. So, all right. So, Exile becomes country in the early '80s, and boy,
yeah,
country music in the 1980s. Oh my gosh! We
yeah.
thought that was huge, and all the way into the 1990s. I mean, in the '80s, what was it? Randy Travis,
Yeah.
Garth Brooks, Alan Jackson,
You know,
and
going
I mean,
into vol. But Alabama, through the 80s, I mean, just, they were the hottest thing in music, period. So that's how hot country music became, in the 80s.
I think Alabama's probably what the biggest selling country band of all time.
Might be, might be,
But that is
and
that's so funny that two of their songs actually originated from Exile.
absolutely did.
But
Absolutely.
isn't it funny how the difference between producers and then particular lead vocals can just change a song and just turn it into a hit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I encourage you and the audience to go, you can go on Spotify or Apple Music, whatever your streaming platform is, and you'll hear, if you type in Exile and you type in Take Me Down or The Closer You Get, you can hear our renditions, our versions of those. And, they're slightly different. I mean, due to, the recording techniques, but they're not crazy different. And then if you really want to challenge yourself, go check out Exile's version of Heart and Soul. It'll blow your mind.
Now, did y'all write that song?
No, Mike Chapman and Nikki Chin wrote that song. Um, when it was a hit for Huey Lewis, again, we were playing in a club in Lexington, still working on our country thing. And somebody came in and said, "Hey, you guys have re-released Heart and Soul." I went, "What?" So we were at a rehearsal. And I'm driving home, and it comes on the radio. I literally pulled over because I couldn't tell the difference. At first, I thought, is this us? It's us. And there were subtle differences. But when Huey sang his opening line, he sang 2 o'clock this morning. The original version is 4 o'clock this morning. And that's when I knew it. Oh, wait a minute, because it is so spot on with our version. I mean, the cowbell, everything that they used. In fact, at an award show in sometime early 80s, we're backstage and Huey Lewis is back there. He said, "Hey, Exile." And we're talking to him. He says, "Man, I don't know why it wasn't a hit for you." He says, "We recorded it just like you did." And I guess it was kind of a compliment, but still,
Well,
you know.
yeah, it really. I mean, I find, when some, a lot of people, when they hear what to them is a hit song, and I'm talking the audience, the
Yeah,
fans, they hear a
yeah.
song on the radio and they're like, "Wow, this is great," but most people never realize the history of an actual song.
Sure.
When Ronnie Millsap came out with Any Day Now, people thought, "Wow, man, that's like," and it was, I mean, he blew up country radio with that song, but a lot of people who weren't into music history didn't realize that Burt Bacharach wrote that song.
Yeah,
Elvis sang that song. I think Tom Jones did a version of that song.
yeah.
Paul Carrick did a modern day version of the song, and literally turned that song into a ballad.
Yeah.
And of course, Ronnie does it as a country song,
Well,
and
yeah. I mean, yeah.
it's just
It's just that
crazy.
most people think, that when they hear a song on the radio by an artist, that the artist wrote the song. A lot of times that's true, but not always. And you know, in our case, besides writing songs or recording, something like Mike Chapman and Nikki Chin wrote for us, those couple of songs. One of the things that we were adamant about was, right or wrong, was playing on our own recordings. Because when we grew up, coming out of the 60s, for example, where you had the Beatles, the Stones, the Who, the Kinks, all those bands, the identifying sound was not just their vocals or the way they wrote a song, but the way they played on their songs. I mean, that was an identifying thing right off the bat. And we always felt that was what would make us different besides our vocal sound, would be the way we all played, in the studio. And we're not studio musicians. I mean, we play our own stuff, uh, but that's a real identifier, because it's going to be unique.
Well, it is. Well, let me ask you this, because you have 60 years of experience. How has
Yeah.
the recording of an album changed?
Oh, and quite a bit. From 2-inch tape, 24 tracks, to now digital recording, where you have multiple tracks. Um, for example, back in the day with our pop albums and all our country albums up until recently, of course, we were always in the studio together recording. Now, due to technology, you know, two of our members, JP and Les, still live in Lexington. The rest of us, Marlon and Steve and I, live in Nashville. We have done the recording a lot different now. We'll go in the studio up in Kentucky, and JP will lay down just a guide track. He'll have a tempo of the song. Then he'll put his electric guitar down, and then I'll drive up there, and then the three of us will sing lead vocals, do all the harmony up there. So we'll have a guitar track, the tempo, and lead vocals. Then we bring it down here, and Steve and Marlon and I will go in and lay bass drums and keyboards. So we're never in the studio anymore, at the same time, and it doesn't matter. It's all about the result, and it's more efficient this way. And here's one other thing. Sometime in the mid '90s or whatever, even early 2000s, I was writing with a young up and wannabe artist in Nashville. This guy unfortunately didn't succeed, but he had a publishing deal, he had a record deal, and we're writing. So he's asking me about, hey, recording, when you guys used to record, I said, yeah, we recorded on tape. Wow, you record? Yeah, we did. He said, well, how did the producer, how did you tune your vocals? And I said, well, the producer would hit the talkback button and say, sing it again. That's how we tuned our vocals. You sang it till you got it right. So, but modern is a blessing and sometimes a curse, but we use it all.
Yeah, I would take the original voice. I mean, it's like filming a movie.
Yeah.
No, do that scene again. And
Yeah.
I think making music should be, no, sing that again, but with more feeling. Sell it to me.
Yeah. I mean, you can use tuning, but you have to have the performance, to have the performance, the feeling in it. You can slightly tune a thing here or there. That's fine. I mean, that's just what modern music is. That's what people are used to hearing, for example. Even talking about the Stones, Mick Jagger's voice is tuned on those tracks, but that's his voice. That's him singing with emotion, as opposed to just, letting somebody sing something and you do all the work in the studio, which you can do, but we don't do it.
One of the most unusual recording was the Beatles.
Yeah.
Gosh, a few years back there was this amazing documentary on just how they recorded in the studio, where
Yeah.
George Martin would literally, let's say John Lennon is singing a song, but he slows down his voice track, which means how are you going to pull that off live?
Oh yeah. Well, of course they couldn't. And that's why they stopped touring. I mean, one of the reasons is because they got so advanced in using techniques and things that they couldn't reproduce that live. You can now,
Yeah.
but you couldn't then. And they started double tracking a voice, which means in the studio when you're doing a vocal, you would sing it twice, and it's called stacking your vocal, double tracking it. And Lennon got lazy, said he didn't want to do that anymore. So he had one of the engineers figure out how to electronically double track a vocal, which was revolutionary. And, we use that with plugins now. That's easily done. But back then, they were revolutionary with the techniques that they came up with the engineers came up.
Well, see, that's what I loved. It's kind of like a sound studio in California. Every iconic band walk through that place, and to hear
Yeah,
the stories on how songs were created on
yeah,
tape,
yeah.
um, and even how mistakes in songs became iconic.
Sure. Again, we sang it till we got it as right as we could sing it. But there are certain little mistakes here or there. But because of tape hiss, because of a record, the way the record sounds on a 45 or an album, you're not, especially with the Beatles. Now with digital, you can hear all the little, subtle mistakes or whatever that happened. Back then, you couldn't. You
Well,
know.
no, not at all. Well, let me ask you this, because you had the monster hit "Kiss You All Over" in 1978, which we'd already talked about, but
Yeah.
that was I mean, put you on the map forever. But Exile had 10 number one hit singles in country. How did that compare?
Oh, it again, it was validation that not just in pop music, but our career could go on, and we were able to do it with our own songs, and it was such an amazing period for us, an amazing time. Uh, I'm more grateful now for that success because when you're in the eye of the storm, when you're writing all the time, you're touring all the time, you're coming home, and instead of days off, you're writing songs. JP and I were writing all the time. We didn't have any time off hardly. And then you're going back out, you're in the studio recording the next project, you're out touring. It was this cycle of stuff. And now looking back on it, I'm so grateful and I'm so thankful for what, we were able to achieve. It was a blessing, but we worked hard at it. We worked really hard to achieve what we achieved.
Well, when you moved into country music, um, how was the audience differences between the U.S. and Europe?
Um, some of the audiences are a little bit more reserved, some of them. Um, in America, in the States, of course, it just blew up. When they love you, and they're going to show you. Interestingly enough, we just played in Canada this past weekend. We were up in Niagara Falls on the Canadian side, by the way, which is beautiful. The Canadian audiences, and by the way, I mean this with all due respect and love, because we love going up there. We love Canadian audiences. They are a little bit more reserved, very appreciative, very, very appreciative, but slightly more reserved than American audiences. Now, at the end of the show, they were on their feet and clapping and having a great time. But audiences do vary slightly from country to country. They do. American audiences. I mean, if they're into it, they're with you, man. It's great.
Well, yeah, it is. Now, let me ask you this, because in 2008, Exile debuted on the Grand Ole Opry. What was that like, and how many appearances have you made since then?
Since then, I'm not totally sure. It's well above 108 or 10 appearances on the Opry. Uh, that is always something that we look forward to. It's an honor. I say this. I wish we were members. I
So,
do.
why are you not members yet?
I don't know. I don't know. Uh, Regardless of the fact, whether it happens or it doesn't, they treat us with. I mean, they're just great to us when we appear. Um, but I should tell you that the first time we appeared on the Opry was actually, I think, in '84. It was right after our first country number one song, "Woke Up in Love," and we were asked to appear on the Opry. And this this is called, we call it affectionately, the Opry train wreck. Yeah. So we're asked to appear on the Opry. Woke Up in Love had turned number one, and we had released our next song, which was "I Don't Want to Be a Memory," which would go on to be the second number one. But anyway, it had just been released. So we go to the Opry, and of course, the first time on Opry, we've got our manager, our record producer, our agents from William Morris, publicists, some family well-wishers, and everybody's crammed into one of the dressing rooms backstage. And, it was just, it was, we were over the top with excitement. So there were two segments that we were going to perform on. The first segment, Jim Ed Norman, God bless him, he was great. He gives us this glowing introduction, this new hot band, the newest it band in country music with their first #1 song. We go out and we play Woke Up in Love, followed by I Don't Want to Be a Memory. And the audience is ecstatic. It was great. It was just great. We come off the stage in our dressing room, high five, and everybody's excited. That's great. That's great. Well, unbeknownst to us, our drummer, Steve, was not feeling well. And with all the excitement and chatter and everything going on backstage, he left. And he actually went out into the Opry itself, in the upper deck. It was just quiet before the next audience came in. And he said he just wanted to get away from everything, just calm himself down. He wasn't feeling well. So nobody notices that Steve's gone. And in our in our infinite wisdom, we decided to change the order of the songs. Instead of doing Woke Up in Love, we're going to start with I Don't Want to Be a Memory. And nobody knows that Steve is not on board with this. And the reason it's such a big deal, of course, is I Don't Want to Be a Memory is what we call a straight 4/4 beat. It's just, I don't want to be a memory versus Woke Up in Love with You, which is a shuffle. So Jim Ed Norman gives us this great introduction again. And we're waiting for Steve to count off. We're waiting to hear a 1, 2, 3, 4, straight count. Instead, he goes, a 1, 2, 3. He gives off the count for Woke Up in Love, which in real time, this is happening right then and there. We're playing this 4/4 beat against Steve playing a shuffle. And, we can't figure out what has happened and why he's doing this. And he is trying to figure it out too in real time. So he's under his breath. I mean, he's yelling at me, what are we doing? What are we doing? I'm trying to tell him we're playing I Don't Want to Be a Memory. He keeps playing the shuffle. So I altered my bass part to I Don't Want to Be a Memory to fit with it. I mean, it was a disaster. It was a disaster.
What, did it sound awful?
Oh, terrible. Terrible. So at one point in time, literally, he switches to I Don't Want to Be a Memory. The rest of us switch to Woke Up in Love. And it goes on. It goes on. And I'm looking out at the audience, and JP's wife was in the audience at that time, our lead guitar player's wife. And she has this look on her face like, what in God's name are you all doing? And finally, I think JP said, because we were playing I Don't Want to Be a Memory, he said to Steve, I don't want to be a memory. And Steve launches into it. We finally finished that song. And then we play Woke Up in Love. Now, mind you, we're trying to keep ourselves together and smile all the while. The rest of us are wanting to kill Steve. We think, he's lost his mind. He's wanting, he's mad. We finish, we walk off stage into the dressing room. We close the door. And buddy, we had it out, there was a lot said. And finally we figured out, what had happened. He said, well, nobody told me. Why did we change the songs? And then he explained what he had done. And it became this laughing thing where, it goes, oh my God, So that was 1984. Even in our heyday of country music, we were never asked back. And it took 2008 to come back together before they asked us to appear on the Opry. And now, of course, like I say, we jokingly, when we appear on the Opry, we look to see, what we're playing? And everybody's on board. We never had that experience again, thank God. But a friend of mine actually got a cassette of that appearance, that doing that. It was as awful as you think it was.
Well, did
And it,
anybody ever tell the Opry what happened?
no, I mean, we've told some people now, and it's just a joke. Everybody laughs about it, now. But it lasted almost 30 seconds. It went, I mean, it seemed like forever, and I just wanted to crawl under anything, and you can't get away. There you are. But it just goes to show you when you're playing live, man, anything can happen and sometimes does.
Well, that's kind of well. Let's say you're on tour.
Yeah.
Most bands change up the song list every night. I
Yeah.
mean,
Oh, that
do you guys do that?
not every night. No. But sometimes we'll change an order here or there. And oh yeah. Yeah. I've made, because I'm the main spokesperson, on stage. Yeah, of course I've done it. Oh yeah. They're looking at me like, hey, check your song list, Or, JP, a song or two, he'll play with a capo. If people know what that is on a guitar,
Yeah, oh
and
yeah.
he'll put it in the wrong spot. Not often, but it's happened a couple of times.
Oh my.
And
Well,
like, oh my God.
I can't even. I mean, I can't even imagine. Being on the Opry and then
Oh,
it's just going to be a train wreck. But I guess you did the second song okay.
we did the second song okay. We smiled through it, through gritted teeth until we got on stage. And yeah, again, I can't tell you why they didn't ask us back, but they didn't. And, it took till 2008, but we
Well,
play all the time.
I can say this now, Grand Ole Opry. If you're listening or watching, you know, after 113 appearances, I think Exile should be members of the Grand Ole Opry. So I think they've
Thank you.
redeemed themselves since 1984. Well,
Oh, yeah.
Sonny, I mean, after 60 years, what would Exile like to accomplish next?
You know, um, just to keep moving forward. We look, we've got this new album, A Million Miles Later, that we're just thrilled to death with. We've got our new single, Rough Around the Edges, which is actually doing well. It's climbing the charts, which after all these years to have a song on the charts is amazing. It's actually done really well in the UK and Europe. I mean, it's gone on number one on some of the lists over there. So there's talk about us going back to Europe next year, which we haven't been in years, which is, I can't wait if that happens. That's going to be exciting. We have a collaboration that I'll tell you about a little bit. We were on a pop cruise earlier this year in March. It was called the Rock and Romance Cruise. And we met this British band from Manchester, England called the Climax Blues Band. And you or some of your audience might remember these guys. They had a couple of huge hits in the 70s also. I mean, and on the cruise, we would alternate shows with them, and they're phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal players, really. So they contacted us after we got home about 2.5 months ago and said, hey, we've got this new song that we wrote. We'd love for you to put your back vocals on our song. So we did. And it's called Facing My Fear. And I'm not sure when it's going to be released in the UK and Europe, but we are going to be on a pop song over there with the Climax Blues Band, which is terribly exciting. I mean, wow. That's
I
kind of
didn't even
cool.
know they were still together.
Yeah, they are, man. And I'll tell you what, they are phenomenal. Now, they've gone through some changes, with members. But, God, man, their lead singer, their players, they're really great, honestly.
Yeah, I used to listen to them all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I miss all the bands back in the day during that
yeah,
era because
yeah.
that's when music was. I mean, it was as real as it could get.
Sure enough, sure enough. And one other thing regarding our new project, this Million Miles Later project, is, when we started writing for this, we said, whatever we whatever day it is, whatever we come up with, we just want to write it. Whatever it is, we don't care if it's quote a country, a pop, whatever. We're just going to write the song to the best of our ability. So we wrote a song this one day called Down in Cold Water, which is a gospel song. And we thought, man, hey, let's put it on a project. I mean, who cares? Let's just do it. So we thought, man, it would be really cool if we had one of our friends in Christian Market record this with us. So we're friends with the Isaacs. And I don't know if you know who they are.
Oh, yeah, I know who the Isaacs are. Oh, yeah.
And, they are phenomenal. So we called them, talked to them about it. They agreed. They put their vocals on this song. And I'm not sure when, sometime later this year or early next year, we're going to release that to the Christian market. And it's a phenomenal song. I mean, I know it's kind of may seem a little odd that this rock band turned country band having a gospel song, but
because back in the day, all the country artists fit from the 1950s probably up till about the 70s. A lot of times the last song on the album was a gospel song.
Yeah. And it's not that we're going to turn into a gospel act. I mean, we don't want to be disingenuous, but, we all grew up we grew up in church. We grew up singing in church. I mean, that's part of our background. I mean, it's genuine. And so doing this song from our perspective, wasn't out of the ordinary. And I don't know what will happen in the future where we'll do more of that. Who knows? But
see, I can't wait to hear it.
Well, it's on the album. It's on A Million Miles Later, called Down in Cold Water. I'm telling you, their performance is exceptional.
I'm gonna have to re-listen to that one again. But again, I love the new album. I love the new album.
It's got all kind of influences on it, and that's just one of the things. That's part of it, and we're again really excited about it.
Well, yeah. Well, after 60 years, together, is there any particular crazy road story you can share with us?
A road story.
A Million Miles Later.
Well, we've been more than a million miles, but hey, as a songwriter, it just sings better. We've had all kind of wacky things happen on the road. I mean, from the bus breaking down, everything happening. We had an episode years ago, maybe in the late 80s. And we were coming back from somewhere in Alabama with our bus. And our equipment truck was following us. This is late in the night. And we were in the kind of the hills, the part of Alabama, in the northern part of Alabama, where you get in some hills and everything. And I'm in my bunk. It's probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when I heard this racket. I heard this thump, 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 thump. I didn't know what it was. What had happened was our, I forget what it was, something had come loose and had severed the hydraulic lines on the bus. So we had no brakes. Now, usually when that happens, there's a fail-safe system that's supposed to kick in, but it didn't. And we're going up a hill. And behind us was our equipment truck, and behind them was another bus filled with senior citizens coming back from some gambling thing. And it was like this little convoy, right? So our driver is communicating, CB radio then, with our equipment guy driver, the bus behind them, what had happened. And everybody was starting to get up off the bus, getting dressed. And the bus is slowing down and going uphill, slow, 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 slow. And I get up. One of our other guys, I think Steve, the drummer, we all get up, and we're in underwear. We're not getting off trying to figure out what has happened. Most of the guys jump off as we slow down up the hill, literally jump off the bus. We got to the top of the hill, and just paused for a second. Now, before we crested the hill, the equipment truck had stopped on the interstate. The bus behind them had stopped. And we're going up the hill slowly, and we stop just ever so, just for a few seconds. And then, the momentum and gravity take over. And here we go, start coming back down. And I hear our driver yelling at the equipment, get out of the way, get out of the way, get out of the way. Everybody starts backing up. Everybody. And I see us, the guys are off the bus dressed. Two of us are on the bus, there we are. We're stuck, for better or for worse. We start going down that hill. All of us, he tries to go around the convoy. They all swerved in the same direction. Like, oh my God. Finally, we passed them. I see us go past them. And our driver's nickname was Bear. I said, Bear, what's going on? He's looking in the rearview mirrors with no brakes. He's going, can't talk now, Sonny. Can't. We go all the way down that hill. And all the way down the hill. And fortunately, somehow there was not another vehicle coming. Ward, it was scary as can be. And finally, we come all the way down that hill and did this kind of a thing. You can imagine, until we finally came to a stop. And when we stopped, his fingers on the steering wheel was like something out of a cartoon. Had to pry his fingers off the steering wheel. But his driving skill saved us from going over the guardrails, crashing, turning over. That's the crazy.
That is the scariest thing I've ever heard.
It was terrifying.
Oh my gosh.
Had we been going up out of Chattanooga, up Mont Eagle, it'd have been tombstoned. It'd have been over.
Oh yeah. Oh, now that's where you don't want that to happen. Mount Eagle. Oh, no way. No way.
Yeah. So that's really kind of the scariest really thing that happened, on the bus. But, everything from, breaking down, and there you are out in the middle of nowhere. Well, boys, welcome. You're living the dream now, aren't you? But it happens.
Yeah, I'm sure the stories are a lot different between before the days of cell phones.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. In a heartbeat, in a nutshell, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Sonny, my goodness gracious. I mean, I want to thank you so much for sharing the music of Exile, the history of the band, and the brand new album, A Million Miles Later. Man, I've had some fun. I hope you did too.
Lord, thank you so much. I've had a blast, and thanks for taking the time to let me share all this with you.
Oh, man. I mean, in a way, it's like a bucket list for me because I grew up listening to Exile when Kiss You All Over hit. And ladies and gentlemen, go ahead, Sonny.
No, I'm just saying, I think, we've been able to talk about some of the cool things. And by the way, if folks want to follow us, which we hope they do, our Facebook page is Exile Band Official. We've got Instagram, which is just the opposite, which is Exile Official Band. We've got a TikTok page, which is also Exile Band Official. And just our website, which is exile.biz, B-I-Z. And, it's got all the touring information and all kind of other stuff. They can check us out.
Well, I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, Sonny just did my job for me. So head over to exile.biz, check out all of their music, their tour dates, and you got to buy the brand new album, A Million Miles Later, and it'll make a great gift for someone this holiday season. So who knows? That someone could be kissing you all over for that new album.
Yeah, man.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, head over to exile.biz, follow them across social media. And for many of you who are like me, who have been fans for years, the brand new album, A Million Miles Later, this is classic Exile. And I will place the guarantee you will love every single song. And hey, there's 16 tracks. That's almost like a double album back in the day.
Yeah. Can I mention one more thing to you?
Yes, go ahead, Sonny.
Because we're originally from the bluegrass state of Kentucky, KET, Kentucky Educational Television, and PBS are doing a documentary on Exile, on the 60 years of Exile. And we've already done a lot of the in-person interviews. And November 4th, coming up in Renfro Valley, Kentucky, at a beautiful theater there that I think actually is sold out. There may be a couple tickets left. We're going to film that concert as part of the documentary process. So that's exciting too, to have, the history of Exile kind of documented, and there for all to see.
Man, that is fantastic. I can't wait to actually see that documentary. And ladies and gentlemen, I know you can't wait either. And again, hey, Grand Ole Opry, I think there needs to be a new member added. The band Exile, 60 years of great music, great success. And again, Sonny, man, thank you for the pleasure and the honor for being on the show. And ladies and gentlemen, again, go to exile.biz and buy, I said buy, the brand new album, A Million Miles Later. Again, you're going to love every single song. And as for me, hey, I want to thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time.